It seems that there's so much drama circulating in Washington right now, and people are pitted against each other and basically hurting the American people. How successful do you think you would be at turning the tide?
Well, I think there's an extreme element in the Tea Party and Republican Party that has dictated the conversation and around moving us away from job growth and growing the economy, investing in areas like education and otherwise. And really, as I said, gutting some of the programs. I think there's room for proper leadership that refocuses us on getting people back to work. We're hovering at 9.2% unemployment level. It's probably higher than that. In communities all over the country, in districts where people, members of Congress and senators represent those districts. Massachusetts is doing a little bit better because of the work of the governor in job stimulation, but we have to reach out to those senators and members and refocus this conversation on getting people back to work, making sure that they have the skill set to work in those jobs, and making sure that we have a fair tax code. I think that with the proper leadership, that can happen, but you have to start with the principle. I always say this, I never would compare the $300 million budget I have in Newton to the $3.7 trillion budget of the United States government. But the principles around making sure that government is efficient and works for people. We are investing in the things that matter. We're cutting away at the things that are wasteful and don't. I had to do that as mayor in the last 2 budget cycles. I saved my city $8 million, but yet we protected public safety and education. We actually improved some areas of city service. We made investments. I sat down with my unions and made that deal that I talked about a few minutes ago, where we used the principle, 2.5% growth in compensation and health. That's the same kind of approach we need in the United States federal government. The leaders in the Senate and the Congress need to take a close look at what we're spending. I mean, look, healthcare costs should slow down. We need to cut healthcare costs, but not reduce benefits. I've offered real solutions, for example, to actually reduce the cost of the Medicare program.
How would you reduce the cost?
One of the things I've talked about is allowing for the Medicare program to negotiate for drug prices. This is a common sense approach. The VA actually does it now and saves millions of dollars. I believe that the Medicare program should be able to purchase drugs outside of the United States, places like Canada. The city of Newton does it now. We save millions of dollars for our employees and the city. These are real solutions that don't harm people. I've spoken often to the defense budget. I care deeply about the defense of this country. I'm an Iraq War veteran. We should invest in areas that protect the country, like intelligence. But we shouldn't be spending in areas that don't protect the country. Spending money on antiquated weapon systems does not make sense. We should reduce our nuclear arsenal. I believe we should bring our troops home as quickly as we can, places like Afghanistan. We've got to make sure that democratic institutions are built in those countries. We support those so that they can solve problems politically and not through violence. Make sure there's stability there. But we should be looking for areas to cut, obviously. But the key is growing this economy. And you need leadership to refocus the country on where it counts.
There are a lot of people who talk about the need for cuts, not just politicians, but voters like me will say, yes, we need to make cuts and significant cuts at that. Some of those people are saying, well, we should cut healthcare costs, the social programs that are out there. But that doesn't really help the country as a whole, in my opinion. So how do you reach those voters who they want cuts across the board, including social programs?
Well, in Newton, one of the things I decided to do was not make cuts across the board. The last thing, for those who are in government and know this, particularly chief executives, when you say you're going to cut something by X amount across the board, you may not actually be cutting the areas where you should. You may be cutting areas in areas that you should not. We took a very different approach in Newton. We used a zero-based approach where we looked at every department and we measured their performance, and we made decisions based on the quality of service and what that service was before we made a decision to cut. We actually made the Treasury Department more efficient by taking out some areas where that didn't matter. Counting coins, for example, in the Treasury Department didn't make a lot of sense. We moved that outside of City Hall so that we could post our checks faster and therefore gain interest that we needed for the city of Newton. We were losing hundreds of thousands of dollars. These are the types of decisions at a micro level that should be made at a macro level. You know, we should be looking at, as I said, if we're spending money in the Defense Department that doesn't go towards protecting the United States of America, we should cut that area of spending. We should look at common sense ways to reduce the cost of health care that don't harm people. This is what the federal government, it's efficient and effective government is the way we should be looking, not just cutting government indiscriminately and not just cutting programs indiscriminately, which doesn't make sense.
Right. I think that's what people, when they get angry, that's what they, oh, we need to cut, we need to do this, we need to do that. Our politicians aren't doing what they should be doing. There seems to be a lot of that lately from both sides. There are people who say the Republicans are all bad. There are people who say the Democrats are all bad. Some people are gravitating towards the Tea Party. Other people are saying the Tea Party is crazy. We can't deal with them. How is it for you going out there and trying to talk to people who may be at that point where they don't care whether you're a Republican, a Democrat, a Tea Partier, a Green Party person, whatever. They just don't want to hear anything from you because you're running for office, you're a politician.
I appreciate that anger because I think that when you pay your hard-earned money and your tax dollars, you want to make sure it's being spent efficiently. And I think that's a responsibility of every elected official in this country, no matter where you are. You know, as mayor, I did 24 town hall meetings since I've become mayor. I've gone out into my community. I've explained the decisions that I was making and why around the budget. And I've gotten input from citizens around what they think is important to improve the quality of life. That's an important element. In addition to making common sense decisions, and I'm saying communicating with people, because it is taxpayers' money. And we do have to make sure that we are efficient with every single dollar. And I think it's made me, I know it's made me a better mayor. It's given me the ability to govern better. Scott Brown hasn't done one town hall since he's been elected. This is the lack of connection and leadership that we suffer from. When we have elected officials that aren't willing to get in front of their constituents, explain what they're doing and why, and talk about their vision of where they believe they would take the country. That's the kind of senator I would be, and that's the kind of senator we need right now.
Speaking of issues, we have gay marriage here in Massachusetts. As a United States Senator, would you vote to have gay marriage nationwide if it came up, or do you think it's a state's issue?
I believe strongly in equal marriage. We should repeal DOMA and allow for people to marry. I think it is wrong for the United States to support policies otherwise. We shouldn't leave it to the states. The federal government should repeal that law so that people can marry. I believe strongly in equal marriage.
What about abortion? Are you pro-life, pro-choice?
I believe in a woman's right to choose, and I believe we should protect that right federally and also in and around the United States in every state.
Gun control is another issue that has come up frequently at the federal level. What is your position on gun control?
Well, we ought to have sensible legislation that protects communities. I mean, one of the things I'm most concerned about is the gun show loophole. That needs to be closed federally. You have the capacity for people to move guns from state to state. You may have laws in one state like Massachusetts that are sensible, and you go to other states that aren't sensible. So you do need some sensible real legislation that protects people. But I'm particularly honed in on that gun show loophole that needs to be closed. That's
kind of scary. I mean, basically I can go to New Hampshire, put down my license, get a gun, and come back to Massachusetts, and nobody would know.
Exactly, and this is
not that I have a record, but you know, I could have a record and go there.
Yeah, you need background checks. You need to have that. You need to make sure that's uniform. You know, you need to have that in place from a federal perspective, so that you're not dealing with that very scenario that you outlined.
There are other candidates for the U.S. Senate on your side of the aisle, the Democratic side. How do you set yourself apart from them?
Well, they're all good Democrats. I've gotten to know some of them over the course of the last several weeks. Look, I have a unique background. I've been a mayor in a difficult economic environment, delivered critical services, and in some cases improved them, put together union deals through collective bargaining that are excellent for my city. I'm an Iraq War veteran, joined the Navy Reserve, as I said, shortly after 9/11, served that tour of duty as an intelligence specialist. I have a unique platform for which to speak around defense issues and foreign policy, and my experience in over 10 years of the federal government, I think, is critically important. I've worked in Washington at the White House, worked with members of Congress, and I've worked for a United States Senator, and Senator Kerry. I think that combined background makes me a compelling candidate in this race, not only through the primary, the general election, but also gives me the skill set that I think is needed in the United States Senate right now. When we were talking about some of the issues that we did over the course of the last 20 minutes or so around the budget, making decisions around making critical investments in this country in places that matter, job growth, education, and otherwise, I've had that experience of making those decisions. I've had that experience of being there and having the buck stop at my desk in government and outside of government. And I think we need to have a United States Senator who's successfully implemented and delivered on the promises that they've made.
Did you always want to run for office?
It was really funny. I started to think about public service, believe it or not, when I ran for student body president at Newton North. I was class president all 4 years. I didn't know where that was going to take me, but I had a unique experience when the mayor at the time, Mayor Mann, called me, and Mayor of Newton, called me into his office to help resolve a pretty serious issue at the high school between two groups of students of racial backgrounds. And he asked me to come in and help solve the problem, and that really served as an example for me of how a public servant, someone in elected office, could actually make a difference. And we successfully solved the problem and really brought people together of different races at that time in 1986. But that had a huge impact on me, that experience. And I think about that often as being mayor, obviously, and now through the Senate campaign, of how we do need to stick to a value and principle and work towards creating a better situation for us all. How do we get to that point? You asked that question, but you have to start with principle and that principle and value.
Enough about you as a politician. Let's talk about you as a person. What do you like to do when you're not campaigning, not running the city of Newton?
Well, I spend a lot of time, try to spend as much time as I can with my daughter, my 3-year-old daughter, at our numerous playgrounds in Newton, and my wife, and my son, 10 weeks old. I try to get as much time in as I can with them, and I also love to cycle. I'm a rider, I'm a cyclist, and I miss doing the Pan Mass Challenge this summer. I've done it twice, but I really love riding quite a bit.
Do you go up to different mountains in the area?
Mountains it's probably a little extreme when you say mountains, but I'll do some long rides. I go out past Dover and try to get out on my bike when I can, and just love being outdoors and riding in particular.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank you so much for being here, and we wish you the best of luck on the campaign trail.
Thank you.
And hopefully we'll have you back as it gets closer to the election.
Fantastic. Looking forward to it.
All right.
Thank you.
That's going to do it for us here today. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.